A baby chimp lost everything, until a white cat decided to become his family. I was on my knees outside the wire at 11 at night when I made myself look at what I had been avoiding for 3 days. He was in the corner, the same corner. 8 months old, dark fur, the size of a human infant, pressed against the wall with his face turned toward it, not moving, not making a sound. The formula bottle I had pushed inside 6 hours ago was untouched. The fleece I had left near him was exactly where I had placed it. Nothing had moved. A baby animal that long without water. I did not need a protocol to tell me what that meant. I could see it. I had an overturned bucket behind me that I had been sitting on, a sandwich on top of it that I had no appetite for. The work lamp I was running on an extension cord threw just enough yellow light to show me the shape of him. The slight rise and fall of his chest that I had to look for carefully to confirm was still happening. The dark fur against the darker wall, the way his shoulders were pulled in like something trying to take up less space than it already occupied. I had been watching him like this, in shifts, since Monday night. It was now Thursday. I had removed Ghost from this building 4 times that day. Ghost is my white cat. She's been on this property for 4 years, and she has made clear, in the way cats make things clear, that every new animal I bring here is a personal insult directed at her. I put her out the first time at 7 that morning. She came back through a gap behind the feeding shelf that I had been meaning to fix for 2 months. I put her out again at noon. She found the gap again. By the 4th time, I gave up. I was too tired to keep closing a door that kept opening, and some part of me, the part that had not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since Monday, wondered if she was trying to tell me something I was not yet understanding. So I was on my knees outside the wire with a sandwich I could not eat, and Ghost came out from behind the feeding shelf, crossed the floor in the unhurried way she does everything, and sat 2 feet from the wire. Not facing him. Sideways. And then she pressed her entire side flat against the mesh and stayed there. She did not look at him. She did not make a sound. She just held herself against the wire like a hand held against a wall in the dark. I put the sandwich down. I had picked Cole up on Monday night from a state trooper who had my number because I am on every emergency contact list within 300 miles. My facility is the only one of its kind in this part of Georgia. 12 acres, a mortgage I was 4 months behind on, and a reputation built on the understanding that when something goes wrong in the middle of the night, I answer the phone. The trooper told me there had been an accident on I-75. A cargo van had gone off the shoulder and hit a concrete barrier near a rest stop 20 miles south of the county line. He told me there were animals in the vehicle. He did not tell me more than that because he did not know more than that. I drove 40 minutes in the rain, following the GPS to a cluster of emergency lights off the highway exit, and when I got there, I saw the van with its nose crumpled against the barrier and its rear doors already open, and a man from the county shelter standing next to them, looking like he did not know what to do with his hands. There were 2 crates in the back of the van. One of them had not survived the impact. The other one was intact, shoved against the far wall of the cargo space by the force of the collision, and inside it, pressed against the side of the crate closest to where the first one had been, was Cole. He was facing toward the broken crate. He was not screaming. That was the first thing that stopped me. A baby primate in distress screams. It is one of the most recognizable sounds in nature. High, sharp, relentless, built by evolution to bring something running. Cole was not making that sound. He was making something lower, something that stopped the moment I reached into the crate, something that told me the screaming was already finished, that whatever he had done in the first minutes after the crash had already run its course, and what was left was this. Stillness, and a direction he would not stop facing. His mother had been in the broken crate. I did not learn that from anyone at the scene. I put it together from the direction he was facing and the sound he made, and later, from a single item of paperwork that turned up when the federal investigation opened. But that night, standing in the rain outside a wrecked van on the shoulder of I-75, I only knew 2 things. He was alive, and he was not going to be alive for much longer if I did not get him somewhere warm. I wrapped him in a fleece from my bag. He did not hold on to me. Baby chimps hold on. It is instinct, older than language, older than anything. And he did not. He let himself be carried the way a thing lets itself be carried when the holding on instinct has gone somewhere it cannot be reached. I drove back in the rain with one hand on the wheel and one hand on the fleece in the passenger seat, and the whole 40 minutes, he did not make a sound. For 72 hours, I did everything I knew to do. Warm formula in a bottle, held near the wire at the right angle so he could reach it without me entering his space. A second fleece pressed against the first one, the familiar smell of something soft. Sitting as close to the wire as I could get without going inside, because going inside too soon with an animal this fragile can collapse whatever is left of their sense of safety. And what Cole had left was small, and I could not afford to spend it wrong. Quiet talking. Not to him specifically, just the sound of a voice nearby, steady and low, the way you leave a radio on in a room so the room does not feel empty. Every protocol I had learned in 4 years of doing this, applied in order, applied carefully, applied with the particular patience of someone who has run out of faster options. Every time I checked the bottle, it was untouched. Every time I looked, he was in the same corner, facing the same wall. My knees were wet. There was a drainage gap under the east wall I had also been meaning to fix, and the rain had been coming in slow and steady since Monday, and the concrete floor had a faint sheen on it in the lamplight, and somewhere around the second night I stopped noticing. You stop noticing things when you are tired enough. The cold coming through the rock into my knees became background, the way the sound of rain on a metal roof becomes background, and I sat in the background of my own exhaustion and watched Cole not move and tried to think of what I had not yet tried. What I did not understand until the third night was that I had been misreading him the entire time. Most chimps in distress are loud. They scream, they throw themselves against the walls, they make noise until something responds, because noise has always been the mechanism. Noise brings the group, noise brings the mother. Noise is the bridge between alone and not alone.
All right, little fella.
Cole went silent,
Take your time.
completely and totally silent.
I saw him earlier.
And I had been watching his stillness and reading it as rest, as incremental progress, as something in him slowly deciding the world was safe enough to remain in. I had not understood that the stillness was the alarm, that the quieter he got, the further away he was going. That silence, in an animal built for noise, is not peace. It is the absence of a reason to call. The lamp flickered. The rain kept coming in under the east wall. I thought about the $91,000 I had put into this property. The fencing, the drainage systems that were not draining, the veterinary-grade enclosures, and the mortgage that was 4 months behind because the grants had come in late, and the intake fees never cover what the animals actually cost. And I had made the decision 2 years ago, in a moment of either clarity or stupidity, to spend the reserve fund on a second medical bay instead of a financial cushion. 12 acres. One more night like this one, and there would be nothing to show for any of it. I watched Ghost press herself against the wire. I did not move her. I did not move anything. I sat there in the almost dark with the rain dripping off the roof in a slow, irregular line, and I kept Cole in the edge of my vision, and I ate approximately 1/3 of the sandwich, and at some point I fell asleep with my back against the fence post. I woke up at 3:15 in the morning with my chin on my chest, and my first thought was the worst thought you can have in my position. I put my face to the wire. Ghost was inside the enclosure. She had gone back through the gap I had spent 4 days trying to keep her out of, and she was pressed against the far wall with her eyes closed. Her white fur caught the last of the lamplight, and she looked like something placed there deliberately, like something that had made a decision. And Cole was lying against her side, not touching her the way frightened animals sometimes press against warmth without meaning to. Against her, his back curved into her stomach, his face turned away from the wall for the first time in 4 days, his breathing visible in the slight rise and fall of his ribs. His chest was moving. I held on to that for a second. His chest was moving. Okay. Then Cole opened his eyes. He looked directly at me. Not past me, not through me. At me. For the first time in 4 days, he looked at something other than the wall. His eyes found my face in the wire mesh and stayed there, and the part of my brain that was still working said, "Do not move," and the rest of me agreed. And we were all very still together, the three of us, on either side of the wire at 3:15 in the morning with the rain slowing down outside. Ghost opened one eye, assessed, closed it again. I sat down on the wet concrete and I did not say anything for a long time. The sound of a truck on the gravel came at 6:40 in the morning. I heard it before I saw it, the slow crunch of tires on wet stone, the engine idling lower than it should for the size of the vehicle. I was standing at the barn door by the time it stopped. They parked across my gate. Deliberate, not accidental. Blocking it the way you block something when you want the person inside to understand that the gate is no longer theirs to use. 2 men got out. I knew who they were before they were halfway across the mud toward me, because I had spent 3 days putting together what the trooper had told me, and what the broken crate had told me, and what the direction Cole faced had told me. And the sum of those things had a shape, and these 2 men fit it. One of them was calm. He held a single piece of paper, handwritten, that he said proved ownership of the animal. He used words like property and documentation and legal avenue, and his voice was the voice of someone who has said those words before and watched them work. The paper might have been real. I did not look at it closely enough to know. While he was talking, the other one walked directly to me. He did not say anything. He put one hand flat on my chest and walked me backward 3 steps until my back was against the side of my own truck. Then he stopped. His hand stayed where it was. He told me they would be back tonight. He said they would bring the county sheriff and 2 other people. He said they would go through the gate either way, and I should think carefully about whether I wanted to be there when that happened. I could feel the truck against my back and his hand against my chest, and the mud soft under my boots and the gravel road behind them, which floods in 2 sections when it rains, which it had been doing for 4 days. My truck would stop in the mud 30 yards out if I tried to drive. Cole was 20 yards behind me in a barn that does not lock from the inside. Here is what I want you to understand, because it matters. What those 2 men were doing, buying and transporting primates across state lines for cash, is not rare. It moves through informal networks across the American South with no documentation, no veterinary oversight, no paper trail. A handshake and a phone number are a transaction. There are no contracts. There are no records. And when something goes wrong, when there is an accident, when an animal turns up at a facility like mine, there is no fast legal mechanism that establishes ownership clearly enough to matter. Animals like Cole fall into a gap in the law, and the only people positioned to catch them are private rescuers with no institutional authority and no enforcement power and, in my case, 4 months of mortgage in arrears. The calm one was still explaining the handwritten paper when I turned and walked back to the barn. I went to the corner of the barn where the signal is strongest. I called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service tip line. Not animal control, not a shelter network, the federal line, live, at 7 in the morning. When someone answered, I read them the license plate on that truck out loud. I did it standing in the open barn door where both men could see me doing it. I kept my voice flat. I read the plate twice. I watched them get back in the truck. I watched the truck back off the gate. I stood in the mud until the sound of the engine disappeared into the wet morning air, and there was nothing left but the rain and the birds starting up in the pines. Then I went back to Cole. He was still against Ghost, still on his side, but his eyes were open and they found me the moment I came through the door. He watched me cross the barn. He tracked my movement the whole way, the way a frightened animal tracks something it is not yet classified. Not threat, not safe, just present, just a thing in the world that might matter. I sat down outside the wire, close but not touching it. I let my back rest against the fence post and my legs go out in front of me, and I put my hands in my lap and I stayed there. The rain came down slower. The work lamp had started dimming around midnight and was almost gone now, just a faint orange glow at the center of the bulb, not enough to see by but enough to know it was still there. Ghost shifted. She stood up, turned around twice in the small space, and pressed herself against Cole's back from a different angle, and he made a sound. Low, nothing like a scream, something I did not have a name for, and then was quiet again. I watched the lamp. I watched the rain. I watched Cole breathe. There is a particular kind of tired that is on the other side of desperation. Desperation has energy in it. It moves. This was the other side of that. A tiredness so complete that thinking stopped being something I was doing and started being something that was happening to me. I was not deciding to think about the mortgage or the federal case or the two men in the truck. Those things were just passing through, the way sounds pass through a room when you are almost asleep. What kept pulling me back was Cole. The way his ribs moved. The way his hand was resting on Ghost's side, not gripping, just resting, fingers loosely curved over her white fur, the way you rest a hand on something without thinking about it, because it is there, and you are there, and that is enough reason. Then he stood up. He had not stood voluntarily in 4 days. He stood the way something stands that does not fully trust its own weight, front heavy, knuckles dropping to the floor once, twice, before he found his balance and held it. He stood there in the middle of the enclosure for a moment. Ghost watched him from where she had settled, one ear turned in his direction. He walked, slowly. The length of the enclosure, corner to corner, the full width of the space, and every step had the careful deliberateness of something relearning the fact of its own body. He did not rush. He did not look away from where he was going. He walked the whole distance and then he sat down on the other side of the wire, 18 inches from my face. We looked at each other. The lamp threw almost nothing now. Just enough light to see his eyes and the white patch on his chest and the faint tremor in his arms from the effort of having crossed that distance. I did not move. I did not speak. I was not sure I was breathing. He reached 2 fingers through one of the wire squares. Slowly, carefully, with no urgency in it, no demand. He pressed them flat against my cheek. Not gripping. Pressing. The way you press your hand against something to check if it is real, to check if it has temperature and weight and the particular solidity of things that exist. His fingers were warm. I had not expected that. In 4 days, I had not been close enough to feel the warmth of him, and now it was on my face, 2 small fingers, warm and dry, and I was very aware of the wire between us and the distance we had both traveled to be on our respective sides of it. I have not cried in front of an animal in 4 years of doing this work. I have been present for things that earned it. I have chosen not to, each time, because I am the one who is supposed to be steady, and steady has always been the one thing I could give an animal when I had nothing else to offer. I cried, silently. I kept my face where it was, because moving meant breaking something I could not name and could not put back together, and his fingers were on my cheek, and that was the only real thing in the world at that moment. The concrete was cold under me. I could feel it through my jeans, through the ground, the deep cold of a floor that has been wet for 4 days straight. The fence post was against my back. The lamp was almost nothing. Cole's 2 fingers were on my face and they were warm and I could feel them and I held very still and let myself feel them and did not look away from his eyes. My brother died alone in a hospital room in 2019, a cardiac event during a night shift. I got the call at 3 a.m. with his fingers still on my face and Cole's eyes on my face and the cold of the concrete under me and all of it at once. I understood what I had been sitting outside this wire for. Not just for him. I understood it from the feeling of being reached through the wire by something that had every reason to stay against the wall. I have spent 5 years with the image of my brother in a corner by himself, in the dark, with no one close enough. I did not know until this moment that I had been looking for a way back to that room. I did not know that the way back would come through a wire at 4 a.m. in the dark. Ghost stood up in my lap. I had not felt her get there. She had come through the gap again, settled herself across my legs at some point in the last hour without my noticing, and now she stood, turned around once, and walked to the wire. She sat down directly between Cole and me on my side of the mesh, and she began to purr. The sound of it filled the barn the way a low note fills a room, not loud, but present everywhere, in the walls and the floor and the air. Cole's eyes moved to Ghost. His 2 fingers stayed on my cheek. Then he reached his other hand through the wire and placed it on top of her head. Gently. The way you place a hand on something you already know is safe, not testing it. Knowing it. He held both of us at once. His left hand on her head, his right fingers on my face, and the purring moved through the wire and through his hand and into him, and he made one sound, low, long, nothing like a scream, something I had no name for and did not try to name. And then he was quiet. And then we were all quiet. The three of us, in the dark, in the almost dark, with the lamp finally giving out and leaving us in the kind of darkness that is not empty. The kind that has weight and warmth and breath in it. The rain stopped before sunrise. I know this because I was still there when it did. Cole's fingers on my face. Ghost purring in the space between us. The silence spreading out from the barn into the pines. The federal case opened the following week. It is still open. The two men have not returned. The handwritten paper turned out to be exactly what it looked like. A handwritten paper with no legal standing, connected to a network that Fish and Wildlife has been tracking across 4 states for 2 years. I am still 4 months behind on the mortgage. I have been 4 months behind for long enough that it has stopped feeling like a crisis and started feeling like the weather, something I live inside, something I work around. Cole is alive. Ghost has a door of her own now, cut low in the east wall, the gap formalized into something intentional, which feels right. Somewhere in the American South tonight, a transaction is happening with a handshake and a phone number, and the animal in that transaction has no protection at the point of sale, and no record of its existence, and no guarantee of anything that comes after. That is not a problem with a fast solution. It is a problem with a long, slow answer that involves a lot of people sitting outside a lot of wires in the rain, doing the only thing available to them, which is staying. 3 months later, on a cold morning in January, I went to the barn before feeding to run the heat. The light was just starting. That thin, directionless light before the sun clears the tree line, when everything is the same shade of gray, and the pines still have mist in them. I looked through the wire, and there they were. Ghost was asleep on the floor of the enclosure, on her side, taking up more space than an animal her size has any right to. Cole was sitting beside her with one hand resting on her back, not gripping, just resting, looking out through the wire at the pine trees, at the mist, at nothing in particular. The white patch on his chest caught the early light. He was not looking at me. He did not need to.